Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're digging into a film that seems to split opinions, Passengers from 2008, and we're doing it through the lens of this really detailed critical analysis you found.
Exactly. It's less a review and more a deep look at a critique,
Yeah.
focusing on production, themes, the whole package according to this one source.
Right. So our mission, basically, is to unpack what this analysis says. What are its key points on atmosphere, story, acting, themes, and what kind of movie does it conclude Passengers really is?
Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, the look and feel. The source jumps right on this. Talks about clinical coldness, lots of grays, soft light, creates this gloomy kind of spectral mood.
Yeah, spectral gloom, that's the phrase they use. But the analysis argues it's not just like style for style's sake. It's meant to serve a purpose.
Which is?
It ties into this idea of a liminal space, that in-between state, between life and death, remembering and forgetting. The critique highlights things like reflective surfaces, that barking dog.
Ugh. Okay, so those recurring images aren't random. They're visual echoes of being stuck.
That's the argument. They reinforce this blurred line the characters are walking.
Interesting. So the visuals are doing thematic work.
Okay, what about the story itself? We start with Claire Summers, right? A therapist.
Helping survivors of a plane crash. 5 of them. But their memories don't quite line up with the airline's official story.
And then things get weird because the patients start disappearing.
Exactly. That drives the mystery, which leads to the analysis's take on the big twist.
Right, the twist. What's the core of it, according to this source?
Well, the analysis says the twist is that Claire and the others, they're actually dead. They didn't survive the crash.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the airline stuff.
That's seen as a manifestation, like the last bit of denial before they move on. The critique does stress this is foreshadowed, though. It's not supposed to feel totally out of nowhere if you're paying attention.
Gotcha. That definitely reframes the whole movie.
Yep.
Now, performances. The source mentions Anne Hathaway as Claire, calls her compelling. Yeah, finding that balance, between being professional and calm, but also showing this growing unease and vulnerability.
And Patrick Wilson as Eric.
He brings this unsettling charm, is how the critique puts it, like an easy confidence that kind of masks something stranger underneath.
And the supporting cast. Andre Braugher, David Morse, Clea Duvall, Diane Weist are mentioned.
They add texture, definitely. Though the analysis kind of sees them as maybe a bit archetypal for this type of story,
Right.
Playing specific roles within the framework.
Okay. And the director, Rodrigo García, the source calls his direction restrained.
It does, and it even brings up a point from, I think it was Fangoria, that felt the tension didn't really build, maybe felt a bit like a Lifetime drama, which sounds harsh.
It does sound a bit harsh.
But the analysis kind of counters that. It suggests that for viewers who value subtlety, the restraint, the quiet moments, the eerie silences, focusing on those visual motifs we talk about, that's actually a strength. It just appeals to a different taste, maybe.
Right, depends what you're looking for. A slow burn versus jump scares.
Exactly. It rewards a certain kind of patience, perhaps.
Okay, themes. The source hits on some heavy ones. Grief, denial, existential transformation, acceptance versus oblivion. Big stuff.
The analysis suggests the film uses the crash, literally, but also metaphorically, like how trauma itself can trap you, suspend you between reality and something else.
So let's break down the strengths and weaknesses as listed in the specific critique. Strengths.
Okay, the source highlights the twist, calling it memorable, the strong central performances from Hathaway and Wilson, and the overall metaphysical premise, finding it compelling.
But it wasn't all praise. Weaknesses mentioned.
Yeah, there were definitely criticisms noted. Uneven pacing that the middle part really drags. Some tonal shifts that felt maybe jarring. Dialogue occasionally coming across as flat.
And that point about tension again, underwhelming for some.
Right. Especially for viewers expecting more traditional thrills or scares. The source acknowledges that.
So summing up the verdict from this critique, Passengers isn't perfect. That slow middle might lose people.
Definitely. But the analysis concludes that the twist and that whole contemplative, moody atmosphere, they can leave a real impression. It's called a low-lit curiosity, I think.
Okay, a low-lit curiosity. I like that. So best for viewers who are willing to lean into the reflective, maybe melancholic side of it.
That seems to be the takeaway. Less about constant excitement, more about mood and the ideas.
So wrapping up our deep dive into this critique, it paints Passengers as this atmospheric, moody piece, more supernatural drama than horror maybe.
Yeah.
Focused on theme, twist, strong leads, but yeah, that pacing and tone definitely make it divisive.
Absolutely. And thinking about the bigger picture this critique raises, if the film explores this idea that trauma or denial can literally create a space between worlds, preventing someone from moving on, makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
Well, how do we deal with difficult truths in our own lives?
Yeah.
How important is confronting reality, even when it's painful, in order to actually, move forward?
That's a deep thought to end on. Really makes you think about acceptance. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Okay, let's get into it. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the 2008 film Passengers. And yeah, just to be clear, we mean the Anne Hathaway, Patrick Wilson one, not the big sci-fi one from later.
Exactly. And our mission here, really looking at the source material you've shared, is to kind of unpack some of the fascinating little details about this film. It's quite unexpected in some ways.
Yeah, because frankly, this wasn't exactly a blockbuster. Not many people might even remember it coming out.
Right.
But digging into your sources, there are some genuinely surprising things here. Like the director doing something unusual for him. A twist ending that gets compared to, wow, some big names.
Yeah.
And a release that was practically, stealthy.
Stealthy is a good word. It definitely creates a curious picture for the film, especially given, some of the people involved.
Okay, so let's start with the director, Rodrigo García. Your sources point out this film was a bit of a departure for him, right?
Yeah.
Into, supernatural suspense.
Right. Yeah, Garcia's known more for these really intimate, character-driven dramas. Things you can tell just by looking at her. Very focused on people. So him tackling something like Passengers with its supernatural kind of thriller vibe, it's a pretty big jump from his usual style. It definitely makes you curious why he took it on.
And that supernatural part, your sources talk about a twist ending. They call it a camouflaged classic twist, which sounds intriguing.
It is intriguing, and what's really interesting is the company they put it in. The sources actually compare the way the story's built to huge films like, The Sixth Sense.
Wow, okay. The Sixth...
And Jacob's Ladder.
Right.
So it suggests Passengers is using a similar kind of big reveal structure, which the sources argue might contribute to its potential cultish appeal later on, even if nobody noticed it at first.
So a twist that's structurally maybe in the same league as those huge hits?
According to the analysis, yes.
But the film itself got, zero buzz.
Pretty much zero, and maybe that lack of buzz connects directly to how it was released.
Which your sources describe as, basically invisible.
Invisible is almost putting it mildly. The film essentially just appeared in theaters. The details mention about 100 screens across the whole country.
100 screens. For a film with Anne Hathaway and Patrick Wilson, that seems incredibly small.
It's tiny. And apparently no advanced press screenings mentioned either, the reported gross. Under $300,000.
Wow. Okay, so less than $300K. That's barely a blip theatrically.
Absolutely vanished at the box office. But here's the thing. Despite this, almost non-existent launch and the tiny numbers,
it still pulled in some really impressive supporting actors.
It really did. Beyond Hathaway and Wilson, your sources flag people like Andre Braugher.
Wait, the Andre Braugher?
Yes. And Diane Weiss, David Morse is in there too.
Wow. Braugher and Weiss. Those are serious actors, known for bringing a lot of weight to their roles.
Exactly. So their involvement kind of adds this layer of quality you might not expect given how quietly it came out. It suggests maybe the script or the idea really appealed to them, whatever happened with the distribution later.
Okay, so you've got this weird mix. A drama director doing suspense, a potentially classic twist, a release so small it barely happened, but then this great supporting cast. How did it actually land with critics and audiences, based on the sources?
Definitely a split decision. Some critics, according to your material, pointed out issues with, the mechanics of the plot feeling clunky or problems with the pacing.
So they felt it didn't, quote, hang together smoothly.
That seems to be one line of criticism, yeah. But then the audience reaction, as documented, was really divided. Some viewers apparently found, surprising depth in it, while others were much quicker to dismiss it as just, quote, rote melodrama.
Rote melodrama. Ouch. Okay, so it's this collection of contradictions then. Dramatic director, supernatural genre, big twist structure, great actors, tiny release, love it or hate it reaction.
It really is quite the puzzle. And having these specific points pulled from the source material makes it a fascinating little case study.
So thinking about this for you, the listener, what does this whole story of Passengers maybe tell you about how a film, even one with known actors and a kind of classic storytelling trick, can just completely missed the mainstream radar when it first comes out. It's almost like it was waiting to be found.
Right. And considering that tiny release and the really mixed first impressions, you have to wonder, how much power does a big twist ending actually have on its own? Can it really help a film like this bypass the initial shrug, find its audience slowly over time, and maybe get that cultish appeal the sources mention? Something to think about.